Okay, the next item of business is a members' business debate on motion 13767 in the name of Rona Mackay on Fetal Alcohol Spectrum Disorder Awareness Month. The debate will be concluded without any questions being put. I'd invite members wishing to participate to press the request to speak buttons, and I call on Rona Mackay to open the debate around 7 minutes. Ms Mackay.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Firstly, can I thank all colleagues from across the Chamber who signed my motion, which has allowed me to hold this important debate during International Fetal Alcohol Spectrum Disorder Awareness Month. This is actually the third debate I've held in the Chamber on FASD in the past 5 years, and I'm delighted to be able to raise awareness and highlight the sterling work of clinicians and researchers once again. Presiding Officer, around 200,000 people in Scotland, that's 3.2% of our population, have FASD. But this is probably a dramatic underestimate, as FASD is the most common neurodevelopmental problem, and it is chronically underdiagnosed. Amazingly, only around 1% of people have ever been formally diagnosed and properly supported. FASD is a birth defect. It's not acquired later in life. It's a lifelong, incurable neurological neurodevelopmental condition caused by exposure to alcohol in the womb. The only way to avoid it is for pregnant women to abstain from alcohol. Dr Jonathan Sher, Senior Fellow of the Queen's Nursing Institute of Scotland, has devoted much of his clinical career to the research and prevention of FASD here in Scotland and internationally. I first heard him speak over a decade ago when I was involved in the children's hearing system in the East End of Glasgow. That speech made a great impression on me. It explained many questions I had about the multiple and recurring issues experienced by children who attended the panel. The condition was first identified in the 1970s and was referred to as fetal alcohol syndrome. At that time, it was identified because of distinctive facial characteristics. It's since been learned that people with facial features are only approximately 10% of the people who have FASD, so 90% can't be determined by facial features. But what is known is that 100% of people with FASD have problems relating to three things: inability to plan, inability to learn from experience, and inability to control impulses. This can lead to addiction, mental ill health, suicidality, and involvement in the justice system. As convener of the Women's Families and Justice Cross-Party Group, we were privileged to have Dr Sher present at a recent meeting. He explained that with the right support and, crucially, early diagnosis, people can reach their own potential and life goals. I'd also like to mention the former Chief Inspector of Prisons, Wendy Sinclair-Gaben, who has considerable expertise in this field. She previously worked in Canada as a teacher, where FASD was recognised as a problem, particularly amongst the Inuit, who had been introduced to alcohol by people who were not native to Canada. At the meeting, Wendy spoke of her experience of Australia, where the prison population had a high number of people with FASD. The problem was diagnosis, and that is the problem here too. Presiding Officer, the Scottish Government takes this subject very seriously. FASD Hub Scotland does excellent work in supporting those with FASD, their families and professionals who work with them. Diagnostic training for practitioners is crucial in this field, as is the responsibility of alcohol producers in the prevention of the condition at the preconception stage. Clear written pregnancy warnings on their products are essential, not least to prevent the condition happening, which is, in my view, the most important factor. But there is an economic benefit of £1.4 million for each case of FASD that's prevented. During 2018, the Scottish Government published an alcohol framework which sets out a commitment to increase awareness of FASD and support improved diagnosis, and there's also a commitment within the Women's Health Plan on pre-pregnancy planning. The right information must be available for people at the right time, including preconception. Information is published on NHS Inform and in the Ready Steady Baby book, where there's a clear message of no alcohol, no risk, whether you're pregnant or trying to conceive. The Government funds two key organisations to deliver the work the FASD Hub does through Adoption UK Scotland, as well as providing support, training and advice to professionals working with people with FASD. In 2017, Adoption UK conducted a survey of nearly 3,000 adopters and 70% of respondents said they weren't warned that their child could be at risk of FASD when they adopted. The Scottish Government also works with the FASD team at the University of Edinburgh, who have produced and delivered their diagnostic course to a number of medical professionals, allowing them to gain the knowledge and skills to be able to support and diagnose FASD and to translate assessment findings into indications of what post-diagnostic support is needed. We've also allocated £55.5 million to boards this year via the Mental Health Outcomes Framework to improve the quality and delivery of mental health and psychological services for everyone. Work is ongoing with the National Autism Implementation Team to develop services around support and diagnose for neurodivergent adults, including people with FASD. So, in conclusion, Presiding Officer, progress has been made over the past 19 years, but not quickly enough, and we must do more. We need a cultural shift in drinking generally. It's important to say that more young women today trying to conceive and expectant mothers do know that they should not drink. But this is not about naming, blaming and shaming women. The point is to take seriously prevention and preconception, health education care around preparing for pregnancy, which would include preventing FASD. We need early diagnosis and much raised awareness of the condition. FASD is a preventable condition, and it is the responsibility of all of us working together to prevent it entirely. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Mackay. We move to the open debate. I call first Sandis Gulhani, followed by Marie McNair. Around 4 minutes. Dr Gulhani.
Thank you. And I wish to draw members from a register of interest as a practising NHS GP. Presiding Officer, as we recognise International Fetal Alcohol Spectrum Disorder Awareness Month, we must confront the stark realities of this condition. FASD is the most common preventable neurodevelopmental disorder in Scotland, full stop. It is caused by prenatal exposure to alcohol, a substance that can inflict irreversible harm on the unborn child. As healthcare professionals, we see firsthand the lifelong consequences of this condition, not just for the child, but for families and for society as a whole. It's estimated that between 3 and 5% of people in Scotland could be living with FASD. There are over 45,000 births each year and a shocking 1 in 7 newborns who are at risk of FASD, which is preventable. This is higher than the prevalence of autism, which is currently at 1%. These numbers should alarm us all, but tragically they reflect Scotland's wider struggles with alcohol harm. The reality is clear. The SNP Scottish Government's policies are failing to deliver the necessary preventative measures. The Chief Medical Officer's advice is simple: avoid alcohol entirely if pregnant or trying to conceive. But with 40% of pregnancies unplanned and alcohol misuse a key contributor to risky sexual behaviour amongst younger people, the Chief Medical Officer's guidance needs to be supported by robust public health measures. The SNP policy, flagship policy of minimum unit pricing is certainly not the answer. It's been paraded as a silver bullet for tackling alcohol harm, but does nothing to directly address FASD or the broader issues of alcohol abuse, addiction and the long-term social harms that it causes. The latest data suggests that alcohol deaths are up to the record highs in Scotland, not seen since 2008. Where is the success in that? MUP has been in place for 6 years, and yet we continue to see no meaningful improvement in the conditions that lead to FASD. MUP also fails to tackle the root cause of many unplanned pregnancies or ensure proper education about the dangers of alcohol in pregnancy. We cannot allow the SNP to pat themselves on the back while the very people they claim to protect suffer the consequences of weak and ineffectual policy. FASD does not just affect the child's health. It leads to higher rates of addiction, mental ill health, suicide and involvement with judicial systems. Without the right support structures in place, these children, through no fault of their own, are left with life-limiting challenges that could have been avoided. The economic argument is also compelling. It's estimated that preventing just one case of FASD saves £1.4 million over a lifetime. Yet this government persists with a policy agenda that kicks the problem down the road, allowing future generations to bear the burden. We need practical, targeted interventions better education, more robust public health campaigns and immediate support for families affected by FASD, not ideological quick fixes, but do nothing to alleviate the strain on our NHS. And if I have time, I will take the intervention.
Ben Macpherson.
I was just... Dr Gulhani started to embark on this. I was interested in what solutions Dr Gulhani and his party may have worked out solutions on these issues. I mean, there was a good part of the speech dedicated to criticism of the government and detailing the problem, but I just wondered if you wanted to elaborate more on solutions.
Dr Gulhani, and give you the time back.
I mean, one of the very first things that we would like to introduce is the Right to Recovery Bill, which gives people the right to recover from alcohol addiction and alcohol issues, along with drugs. And this will be a first step that we can take. We need to put more money into prevention and more money into treatment. That's the key. We can treat people to get them out of the cycle that they're in. The SNP has had 17 years in power, and their record on alcohol harm speaks for itself. So enough of hollow promises. Scotland deserves better. FASD prevention and support should be at the forefront of our alcohol policy, and it's time for this government to face the consequences of its failure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now call Marie McNair to be followed by Carol Mochan. Around 4 minutes. Ms McNair.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I'm pleased to speak in this debate, and I thank my colleague Rona Mackay for bringing this important topic to the Chamber. Fetal Alcohol Spectrum Disorder Awareness Month is a time to educate ourselves and our communities about the impact of alcohol consumption during pregnancy and to advocate for those affected by fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. Alcohol exposure during pregnancy can lead to permanent harm to an unborn child and can lead to lifelong consequences such as cognitive and behavioural issues, as well as physical disabilities such as organ damage and poor growth. It's estimated that between 3 and 5% of people in Scotland could be living with FASD. However, some suggest the figures could be even higher. And it affects everyone throughout their lives, impacting their ability to engage in daily life when early support is not put in place. Despite this prevalence, awareness and understanding of FASD remains low, so it's our responsibility to raise awareness and educate ourselves and others. Key to this is the understanding that there is no safe level of alcohol consumption during pregnancy. The Chief Medical Officer is clear, and it's best to avoid alcohol during pregnancy or even if planning to get pregnant. And this is crucial to protecting the health of future generations. Early identification and support are crucial, and with comprehensive support, individuals with FASD can prosper in their educational and life goals. And in Scotland, we are fortunate to have a network of organisations available to help support those with FASD and their families, and the FASD Hub Scotland is a perfect example. Funded by the Scottish Government, they offer peer support, training and one-to-one family support services. Parents and carers can guide you through the process of getting a diagnosis, help with accessing benefits, funding and getting additional support. They play a crucial role in increasing awareness and providing that safe space for parents and carers to share their journey and experiences. And as MSPs, it is our job to make sure organisations like this are highlighted within Parliament and our constituencies, so people are aware of the supports out there. I also agree with my colleague Rona Mackay that it is important to increase awareness and training for practitioners to enable access to diagnostic and support services for those with FASD and their families. So it is welcome that through the Scottish Government's funding, the Fetal Alcohol Advisory Support and Training Team have a national remit to provide and facilitate training, consultation and research. And this will enhance the capacity, knowledge and confidence of Scotland's health and social care workforce in their work with those affected by FASD. I'm also pleased to note that as of last month, the University of Edinburgh now offer Europe's first postgraduate certificate in FASD. On a final point, and to conclude, Presiding Officer, FASD Awareness Month is also about recognising resilience and strength of those living with FASD and their families. And with the right support, those with FASD and their families can flourish. Support networks are key to this by fostering connections between families and providing a safe space for them to share their experience and advice. And as we mark Foetal Alcohol Spectrum Disorder Awareness Month, we must recommit our efforts to raise awareness throughout our communities and work together to reduce the rates of FASD whilst continuing to advocate for the rights and needs of those affected. Together we can create a country where individuals are rightly supported and empowered to live their best lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Mayor. I now call Carol Mochan to be followed by Gillian Mackay, around 4 minutes. Ms Mochan.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. And can I also thank Rona Mackay for her commitment to fetal alcohol spectrum disorder and of course bringing this important debate to the Chamber to mark International FASD Awareness Month this year. It is vital, as others have said, that the Parliament has an opportunity to talk about this issue, raise awareness and call for continued action to support interventions. We really do, as parliamentarians, have a responsibility to look at how we reduce the prevalence and impact of FASD in Scotland and support those who live with it. As we've already heard, it's been estimated that around 3.2% of Scotland's young people live with FASD, and the figure is quite stark when we think, as the motion states, it is the most common preventable neurodevelopmental condition in Scotland. And I've read evidence, as has been brought forward by colleagues here today, from the University of Glasgow, which suggests the prevalence could be higher than we previously thought, with about 42% of babies having been exposed to alcohol in pregnancy and 15% having shown signs of exposure to high and frequent consumption. And so, as has been stated, it is preventable, and the UK Chief Medical Officers have made it clear that alcohol and pregnancy do not mix, and that they do recommend that the safest approach for people who are pregnant or planning a pregnancy is not to drink alcohol at all, and that would keep the risks to the baby to a minimum. Alcohol at any stage of pregnancy risks developing a neurodevelopmental disorder, and it's important that people understand that. However, I want to make 2 points. One, that over a quarter of women in the UK are unaware of this advice not to drink alcohol. And 2, we do know that many pregnancies are actually unplanned, and there's an estimation that 45% of pregnancies in the UK are unplanned. So what do we do about this? How do we make sure this information is there to young women who may be planning a pregnancy or do not know that they are pregnant? There is clearly an important piece of work to be done to ensure the messaging on this is clear for women throughout their life, so that they know that information. And of course, we have a responsibility to make sure the preconception strategy that we put in place is there for people to get that information. Now, another important point is that binge drinking, which is consuming lots of alcohol in a short period of time, is thought to have a particular risk for FASD. And what we do know is that in Scotland, there is an element of binge drinking around in women. So I do think here in this place, in this Parliament, we must use this opportunity, this debate, to talk about the wider approach to alcohol strategy for Scotland, which seeks to change that problematic relationship we have with alcohol in Scotland. Now, alcohol policy needs to be a range of measures formulated and implemented by government and other public bodies, and it's designed to prevent, improve or treat the health and social problems associated with alcohol use and problematic alcohol use. And I hope, given the commitment this government and indeed this minister has given in the past, that we might be able to, in the response to the debate, have some discussion about those public health measures that we might be able to improve on and move forward on, and what kind of pace will we have with that? So as I draw my remarks to a close, I really want to thank all colleagues for coming and discussing this matter in the Chamber today. We must seek to get the best support for those living with FASD, improved diagnosis and support, but prevention is key. And in Scotland, I think we do know that we need to move forward with that. So thank you to all my colleagues for contributing.
Thank you, Ms Mochan. I now call Gillian Mackay to be followed by Ben McPherson. Around 4 minutes, Ms Mackay.
Thanks, Deputy Presiding Officer. September marks Fetal Alcohol Spectrum Disorder Awareness Month, and I'm very grateful to my friend Rona Mackay for securing this important debate. The 9th of September is International FASD Day and has been since 1999. The 9th day of the 9th month signifies that abstaining from alcohol for the 9 months of pregnancy can help to ensure that babies will not be born with FASD. Fetal alcohol spectrum disorder is not the only outcome of drinking alcohol in pregnancy. It also increases the risk of miscarriage, premature birth, stillbirth, as well as sudden infant death syndrome. The figures from the Scottish FASD strategy group show that on average 15% of pregnancies are exposed to alcohol in Scotland involve high and frequent consumptions. These figures show that the United Kingdom experiences the 4th highest prenatal alcohol exposure anywhere in the world. Around 3 to 5% of the population is estimated to have FASD in Scotland, in contrast to the estimated 0.8% globally. This underscores the scale of the work that needs to be done. And we've heard from around the Chamber so far of the impacts on individuals of FASD. I think this has been covered well, so I won't repeat some of the remarks that have been made already. But I did have the pleasure, as I'm sure many other colleagues did, to speak to those who have been diagnosed with FASD earlier in the session when they had an exhibition in Parliament. Many spoke of the stigma they felt as a result of a health condition that was not of their own making. Some spoke passionately about how they used their experience to educate other people about the challenges they face in terms of their health, but also about how other services where they face challenges and barriers affect them. One issue that was highlighted was that often people with FASD are diagnosed with other neurodevelopmental conditions and therefore receive the wrong treatment and support. And therefore it's really important, as Rona Mackay mentioned in her speech, that clinicians get the right training to appropriately diagnose those who present looking for help. I'd also like to take this opportunity to highlight some of the incredible work being done in my region to support those with FASD. The North Lanarkshire Alcohol and Drugs Partnership provide face-to-face training for professionals and parents and carers, as well as peer support to share experience and holding family events and meetups to support families and those diagnosed with FASD. In Falkirk and across the Forth Valley Health Board, Scottish families affected by drugs and alcohol offer remarkable support to those affected by FASD conditions. The Forth Valley Family Support Team schedule sessions that last around an hour and travel across Forth Valley and frequently use rooms in libraries, community centres and treatment services to meet with family members, taking the support to those who need it. This is in addition to an incredible array of third sector organisations and charities that work around the clock delivering support in both health boards that span Central Scotland region and indeed more broadly across Scotland. Presiding Officer, we must continue our efforts to prevent fetal alcohol spectrum disorder and treat addiction issues with the urgency they require. This is why we cannot forget that FASD often exacerbates existing forms of poverty and deprivation. As a result, we must work in tandem to continue to raise awareness of the risks of drinking during pregnancy, double our efforts to reduce the overall population consumption of alcohol and ensure that those affected by FASD are identified and supported appropriately and adequately in a timely manner. This can only happen if we are able to ensure that the National Neurodevelopmental Assessment pathway is adequately resourced to allow early identification and appropriate support for those with FASD. I also believe that we must consider the lived experience of those that are pregnant and enhance pathways for support. There are many challenges that exist in our most deprived areas, and that, along with a lack of awareness and understanding of FASD, are particularly problematic. And we must ensure that those that are the most vulnerable receive an extensive range of support and assessment. Thank you.
Thank you. And I now call the final speaker in the open debate, Ben McPherson, around 4 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer, and I also commend Rona Mackay for bringing this important issue to the Chamber. Colleagues have raised a multitude of really important points, and I just wanted to raise one other issue on behalf of a constituent who's been in touch with me recently, but also constituents who've been in touch with me in the past on these points as well over the years. Other members have talked very extensively and passionately about the support available to families and parents. But one of the issues that's come across my constituency casework desk has been support available to parents in my constituency, but I'm sure this will apply elsewhere, who are adoptive parents and are raising children with FASD. We, of course, as a society, want to encourage adoption and want to make sure that there's support available, as we want to make sure there's support available for other parents as well. But perhaps the Minister could, either in her summing up or in written correspondence to me after today's debate, give me some more insight into what's available to support the quite unique nature of the support that's required for raising children with FASD and what adoptive parents are able to access, and perhaps we can engage in some correspondence on how that may be able to be enhanced and improved. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I now call on Jenny Minto to respond to the debate. Minister, around 7 minutes, please. Thanks.
Sorry, it was very informal. Thank you, Presiding Officer. And I too would like to thank Rona Mackay for bringing this debate to the Chamber as part of International Fetal Alcohol Spectrum Disorder Awareness Month. Like Gillian Mackay, earlier this session I met and spoke with people living with FASD and was very struck. And following on from what Ben McPherson has just talked about, adoptive parents, that was exactly one of the conversations I had. So very happy to discuss further with Mr McPherson on this subject. The Scottish Government is committed to preventing the harm caused by alcohol consumption during pregnancy and to supporting those impacted by fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. And I will outline our approach to prevention as well as the work that is ongoing to improve those living with FASD. The clear message from the Chief Medical Officer, as others have said, on alcohol during pregnancy remains no alcohol, no risk. This message features in Ready Steady Baby and on NHS Inform, where there's information on why women should avoid alcohol when pregnant or trying to conceive. We have recognised for some time the importance of preconception care to aid pregnancy planning and preparation, and where this can significantly reduce avoidable harm, including alcohol. As others have mentioned, the Women's Health Plan, which was published in August 2021, contained an action to support pre-pregnancy care. As part of this commitment, NHS Inform launched information on pre-pregnancy health in October 2023 to bring together information and support for women and men to consider when planning a pregnancy. Our work is also focusing on ensuring that key messages, knowledge and awareness are embedded across the health system, connecting the public health outcomes that have the highest risk of poor outcomes for mother and baby and highest potential to improve short and longer term health. This includes the risk of drinking alcohol during or when planning for pregnancy. Improving preconception care therefore requires a dual strategy, targeting health improvement in both women and men when planning a pregnancy and in the general population of reproductive age. And Carol Mochan will recall last week, myself, Carol Mochan and Dr Gulhani took part in a public health event, and this specific question was raised, and I have committed to having to extend that conversation and would be very happy to continue that with Carol Mochan. Preconception plays a key role in the Early Child Development Transformational Change programme, which is aiming to reduce the proportion of children reported with developmental concerns at 27 to 30 months by a quarter by 2030. And the First Minister affirmed this in his statement introducing the programme for government. He stated that addressing risks and problems at this stage can have positive impacts that last through to adulthood. It can support healthy development, prevent illness and ease future pressures on services. The Scottish Government is determined to ensure that people living with FASD have the opportunity to live life on their own terms, properly supported when they need to be. We are committed to improving outcomes and opportunities for all neurodivergent people. As Rona Mackay and Carol Mockham both said, FASD is the most common preventable neurodivergent condition. It's lifelong and can affect every area of a person's life. We work across government on our neurodevelopmental policies to ensure that we are targeting the policies that impact most on people's lives. In 2018, as been referenced, we published an alcohol framework which sets out a commitment to increase awareness of FASD and support improved diagnosis. Yes, of course, thanks.
Gillian Mackay.
Partly to give the Minister a minute to take a wee sip of water there, but given some of the other discussion during this debate, would the Minister support greater education for clinicians and those working with young people to help identify FASD at the earliest possible opportunity and raise awareness of some of those symptoms so that we can see an end to those diagnosed with the wrong neurodevelopmental condition?
Minister, I can give you the time back.
Thank you. And I thank Gillian Mackay for that incredibly helpful intervention. Thank you. We absolutely know how important it is to provide education and training on FASD as well as to support families and individuals. That's why we fund two key organisations that have both been referenced in other members' debates. Additionally, we've also committed to introducing the Learning, Disability, Autism and Neurodiversity Bill. This bill is a real opportunity to ensure that the rights of neurodivergent people, including those with FASD, are respected and protected. The final consultation analysis report for the bill has now been published with nearly 900 responses. The consultation demonstrates the bill's importance to many people and organisations across Scotland. Indeed, it demonstrates the need for change. The Programme for Government 24-25 affirmed our commitment to continuing to develop proposals for the LDAN bill and stated that we will publish draft provisions. The bill's proposals cover many different areas of life, including health and social care, justice and education. In 2021, the Scottish Government published the National Neurodevelopmental Specification for Children and Young People, which sets out 7 standards for service providers to ensure that children and young people who have neurodevelopmental profiles with support needs receive support that better meets needs. It is based on the Getting It Right for Every Child approach and aims to ensure that children and families receive the support and access to services that meet their needs at the earliest opportunity. For many children and young people, such support is likely to be community-based and should be quickly and easily accessible. And I note the points that Ben McPherson made around adoptive parents as well. I think I'd also like to highlight both the points that Marie McNair and Gillian Mackay made about organisations across their constituencies, and I know that there are a network of these or such organisations working throughout Scotland, and I would like to thank them for the work that they do. I hope that I've given some reassurance to everybody today of the importance that this issue is to the Scottish Government and demonstrated the work that is ongoing to prevent FASD and support those with FASD to live their best lives. We are aware more needs to be done in Scotland, and this includes raising awareness of the issue, which I am so grateful to Rona Mackay and everyone else that's spoken in this debate for doing that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. That concludes the debate, and I suspend this meeting of Parliament until 2 p.m.